Hi, I'm Donna, and today we're going to be looking at the Continental cast on or longtail cast on. This is the 5th video in our Cast On Toolkit series. This is going to equip you with a really good repertoire for all your knitting projects. There are many cast-ons out there, but this hopes to give you that really key group of 7 cast-ons. So this is actually the 4th cast-on we're looking at. We're moving on to longtail cast-on now, and there are a number of names for this cast-on: Continental cast-on, German cast-on, I think. And there's also 2 ways of doing this cast on, so we'll also look at the thumb cast on, which is just another way of achieving exactly the same mechanics for the cast on. So characteristics of this one is it's a real workhorse of a cast on. It's really great general purpose, will suit most stitch patterns, and it gives a firm and fairly elastic edge. So it's great for most projects, but except those where you need a more specialist edge, like if you want something to be really stretchy, such as the edging of a sock, or if you're wanting a more decorative edging. Anyway, so it's really good for garter stitch edges, but when we look at the how to do the cast on, I'll talk a bit more about how it affects the edge, and there are always options. In theory, because of its structure, the first row is actually already knitted, already accomplished once you've finished the cast on. But I think there's a bit of flexibility around that, because you may have your own preferences, as do I, around that, depending of course on the project that you're doing. So that's it. Pull up a seat, pick up your needles and yarn, and let's get started. Okay, so this cast on, you'll want to have a play with this later just to decide what effect you like along the edge, and I'll explain that as we go. It'll make more sense then. So, Continental cast on is a long tail cast on, and what that means is we start with quite a long tail, depending on how many stitches we need. This is because we actually form the stitches from 2 strands as we go along, and that gives us more of a sort of base to our cast on. And the way to kind of calculate how many stitches you will need is to I've just wind the needle round for as many stitches as I want, and that will give you plenty. And if you've got a lot of stitches, you'll probably have more than you need. So I allow a little bit for the tail to sew that in, and then I don't know, I sort of will do 1 2 3 4 5 6 so 10. I know I want 20 stitches for this, so I'm going to just double that up, and I think I'm there. Okay, and depending on your numbers, if you've got a lot of stitches, I don't know, do 20, 40, 50, and then double it if that suits you better, if that makes sense. So we make sure we've got plenty of tail, and then we do our usual slip knot. Okay, and if you've been following these, you'll know this by now. And then I can pick that up with my needle. With long tail cast-ons, you will tend to go a bit tight, so you are advised to use a larger size needle than you actually need by 1 or 2 sizes, or in fact, if you've got fairly small needles anyway, so less than 4mm needles, you actually as well to stick 2 needles together and use that as 1 needle, okay? And that will make those loops looser, otherwise you will tend to get tight. So this is the tricky bit for people. So once you get going, you're fine. But that's the yarn attached to my ball, and that's the end. And I'm basically going to put my thumb and forefinger through like so, okay? And then I'm just gonna bring that down. It's a bit like a cat's cradle. Okay, so I'll show you that again. Put your thumb and forefinger through, and then kind of pull it back on itself, a bit like a sort of cat's cradle. And then to do each stitch, you go under this one, okay, right up over the one on your finger, and then you come back through that loop, and as you do that you're letting that go, and I'm actually pulling this loop there to tighten that up a little bit. Okay, so I'll show you that again. You come under, go right over the other side, hook that thread, pull it back through that loop and tighten it up. I'll do that again. Okay, over, back through the loop, and there we have it. Under and over, wombling free. I'm trying to remember how my mum helped me remember this, but it was such a long time ago. Okay, so we go under there and we go over there, and it comes back down there. Let it go, loosen it up. Okay, I will start to speed up because I want you to see, you know, one benefit of this technique is that you can get really quite quick at it once you're more proficient. Okay, and so you can have loads and loads of stitches on your needle in no time at all. Okay, I've got 20 there, and you can just press replay to see that again. And so what we've got then is, in theory, we've already worked that row, and it depends how you want your edge to be. If we assume now we're going to start with row 2, then what we'll get left with is this effect. Okay, and if we like that, all well and good. I actually, for the most part, prefer it not that way. I actually, and I'll knit this row in a minute, and I'll show you what it looks like the other way round. So this one, I've assumed row 1. My first row is row 2, so my first row there was purl. What I would say, this one, my first row was knit, and it's garter stitch anyway, but I treated it as my right side row for garter stitch, and it makes a really effective edge with garter stitch. So I cast on, and then I started my right side row, which was knit. Obviously garter stitch every row is knit, but that was definitely my right side. And then, so instead of a fluffy sort of, I think it's a bit fluffy and a bit whereas you could think, oh, that looks exactly like a row of garter stitch here, and that is actually the cast on making those ridges there. So I will fast forward with the power of camera, and I will quickly knit this up a few rows, showing you what this looks like if I make this my right side row, my row 1, rather than assuming and treating that first cast on as row 1. Okay, so I've done a few rows, and then just to show you the difference in the edge. So this is exactly the same cast on, but I did my first row on the wrong side as a purl row, and then this is how it appears on the right side, and then this is how it appears if I actually ignore the cast on, just start my first row as row 1, and that was a knit row. And you get these ridges, which I think some people maybe don't like, but I think that just looks like, as I say, one row of, you know, it looks like a garter ridge. So I actually quite like it that way. But, you know, it does give you options. So have a think how you like it. And I definitely think it's one to use for, you know, if you're having a few rows of garter stitch to start with, because it looks so much like the first garter ridge. And what I mean by that, if you don't know, when you do garter stitch, you kind of, these all shrink together, so every time you knit from the wrong side you get a ridge, and the knit stitch when you're on the right side sort of hides in there, okay? But it very much looks like the start of garter stitch. And yeah, see what you think. Okay, so if you're thinking, oh my god, that's a bit like wrestling with an octopus, I never was good at cat's cradle and all that, there is another way of achieving exactly the same cast on. It's known as the thumb cast on, but it really does work in exactly the same way. Some people may find this more manageable, easier. Okay, so like we did before, we want a really good length. Okay, so that you work out how long a length you need to leave, and then we can do our slip knot. Okay, so it's similar in that we did that before, but you're actually just sticking your thumb in and grabbing it like so. Okay, and we're basically going to knit into that loop there to get us our stitches, and I'll show you how. So so that is this one is the working yarn, that's the one attached to the ball. Okay, and I'm like knitting into that loop. Do that again, and many people find that just as easy. I will say any new kind of task that you do with your hands, it all kind of depends on motor memory, so you will be able to do these, just keep practicing and then it becomes second nature. This is slower for me because I'm actually much used to doing it the other way, and I can whiz away because that's what I'm used to. But the way to get better is, there's no other way around it, is practice, and you'll be able to do this without even thinking of it. But this thumb method for casting on is, as I say, exactly the same. So the same things apply there about tension. You're likely to be getting a bit tight, so use a larger needle or 2 fine needles held together, and you'll be able to whiz away with this, and it produces exactly the same edge as that, because it's actually doing mechanically exactly the same thing. So that's the Continental or thumb cast on, a really good workhorse of a cast on, will suit many projects and will be of great value to you. And as always though, you might want to test it out with the particular edge that you're trying to achieve. As I've said before, I'll be making the Cast On Toolkit available when all these videos are done. They'll all be collated and put in a PDF along with my notes, and that will be made available for you, free to download. I'll be adding the link. In the meantime, you can just subscribe to my email list and I'll let you know as soon as that's out. And I hope these are of value to you. If so, please give me a thumbs up. And next time we'll be looking at the twisted German, or Old Norwegian it's sometimes called, bit of a debate who owns it, cast on, and that's another long tail cast on. It's very similar to the one we've done this week. It just builds on that, but it will be giving you a much more stretchy edge for projects that need that. Okay, so good to see you. Hope to see you again next time. Take care. Bye bye now.